Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya, and we are here at Open Infrastructure Summit in Denver, Colorado. And today we have with us our regular guest, Boris Renski, co-founder and CMO of Mirantis. So Boris, first of all, thank you very much for showing up one more time.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so today, this is the second day. We are in the middle of the summit. How has been your experience so far?
There are some good things, there are some bad things. The obvious bad thing, I think, is that it's not as glorious as it used to be many years ago, where you have, thousands and thousands of people and huge crowds, and just it's much more kind of a concentrated and focused, I would say. So it kind of reminds me of what OpenStack Summit used to be when things were just kind of getting started, where you have kind of, the focused, loyal following of people that are deep with the technology and the real use cases that all gather together to actually kind of, work and solve some real problems. I always talked about it. Actually, back in the glory days, people would ask me, oh, so how do you like the summit? Back in when it was Austin, there was 8,000 people or something like this. And my answer was that actually, I preferred the summits that were, years back when it was just small groups. Because when OpenStack was just getting started, I remember it was 700, 800 people or something like this, but everybody was really focused on the specific work that they're doing and really passionate. And then when it grew to 8,000, it was just, IBM would send 300 people, of which, 150 don't even know what open source is. They're just going because you have to have that check mark on your resume that, you do the product management and OpenStack. And it seems like now that the hype's over, we're back to that concentrated, loyal following, which, kind of, the bad side of it is I have to fend a lot of questions from people why is there not so many people? But the good side is that actually all the people I hear I know and I have meaningful conversations with.
So if you look at Mirantis, and we have spoken earlier also about the evolution of the company. So when we look at Mirantis and OpenStack users, what are the new problems that you have identified that you are trying to solve for them? Or what is your focus area now?
Yeah, so our focus area has largely stayed unchanged from the last several times, and to some extent from the very beginning, and that is on-premise cloud, right? So how do you deliver in a cost-efficient way, open source-based, vendor-agnostic, on-premise infrastructure? Some of the kind of higher-level constructs have changed, of course. So before, everybody was very much interested in just having an on-premise EC2. Today, more people are interested in having an on-premise, Kubernetes service. So the problems that we're actually solving are, the lower level infrastructure problems related to to being able to run Kubernetes on premises. But the core still remains the same.
Before we started recording the interview, you're mentioning the distributed systems that you're looking at with project like Airship.
Yeah, this pertains to specifically the use case that is common in the telco space, but not only. It's the so-called edge use case. I just don't like to use the word edge because it's so amorphous. But basically, it's as people have deployed many, and by many I mean 20, 40, 100 smaller distributed clouds. How do you actually manage the life cycle of those clouds on, kind of via a single unified flow, right? And this historically has been a problem in the telco space. So before Edge was even a thing, folks that were using OpenStack in the telco space, they would use it for an FCI, and for an FCI, you would also do the same thing. You build many distributed clouds. So we've been focused on that problem for a long time. And I think that there's certain convergence happening today in the industry as to how you solve that problem. And the common way to do it nowadays is to basically use what people refer to as declarative infrastructure operations. But basically what it is that you have a model of your cluster that is represented in a YAML file, or usually it's multiple YAML files that you can actually build in a very granular fashion and then you feed that YAML to some sort of engine. In our case, it's drivetrain. In case of Airship, it's something that they called Armada and Shipyard, that then updates the infrastructure across all of the environments off of the same exact model. So you have one model, but many clusters, and a single process for updating them. And one of the things that it's very powerful, it's completely declarative. You don't have to tell like what every single cluster should look like. You just specify one model. But the problem is that most people are not very comfortable dealing with YAML files, especially when you venture outside of like hardcore open source communities like here, like an OpenStack and some of the KubeCon people. But like if you go to an enterprise, people are used to like a streamlined experience. So the one thing that we are doing about it is we've introduced this thing called the Model Designer. The Model Designer is basically a SaaS service that helps you generate that YAML model using predefined, significantly simplified guardrails. So the experience is very similar to what people would used to have with us back in Fuel days, where you just go into this clean interface, you say, like what kind of version of Kubernetes and OpenStack you want, how you want to do networking, how you want to do storage, within like a fairly opinionated model. And then that engine will generate the YAML model for you, which you can then push out unchanged, or if you want, if you're like a more of a power user, you can go into raw YAML and you can change it. So this is kind of our attempt to inject some predictability and simplicity into this very flexible model of using codified like YAML-based cluster models for managing distributed infrastructure.
You mentioned Airship, and a new version also came out, if I'm not wrong.
The first 1.0.
But it's not new. It's the first dot release. What is your engagement with the project?
So we are actively contributing upstream to the project, actually. We've historically been kind of in and out in terms of our focus in different projects. So when OpenStack was, like main OpenStack projects like Nova and Swift and Glance were just kind of getting stabilized, we spent a lot of time, a lot of resources upstream working with the community building. Then once it's stabilized, we kind of kept just a little bit to maintain. With Airship, we are kind of in the model of where we were with OpenStack back in the day. So right now there's a lot of like the model that Airship pursues is very sound, and it's very similar to what we do in Mirantis Cloud Platform in terms of how it approaches the problem of lifecycle management for distributed systems. But it is fairly new still, and a lot of the components will move over time. So we're actually putting a meaningful kind of task force of people upstream to help kind of mature and stabilize the project so it can be used by the broader ecosystem of telecom vendors, but not only, also enterprise customers.
Awesome. Thank you, Boris, once again for talking today, and of course we'll see you at the KubeCon.
Yes, see you at KubeCon, definitely.
Thank you.
In Barcelona. Yep.